हरिओम। ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ओम पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So fourth chapter, the last part we saw, 12 different types of spiritual practices were given, which different people can apply in their daily life and integrate the body, mind and the intellect. So we saw that till verse number 32, where the 12 types of yajnas were concluded. Now of all the different types of yajnas, in the verse number 33, the Lord says, Shreyam Dravyamaya Yajna Jnana Yajna Parantapa. Of all different types of yajnas, the best yajna is the Jnana Yajna. Why? Sarvam karma khilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Because every other type of yajna, whether it is ahara yajna, that is diet control, or pranayam yajna, breath control, or dravya yajna, offering some materials in charity, every other form of spiritual discipline only helps to purify the mind, make it more selfless, make it more single-pointed, which is only a means. With such a means, a mind which is prepared and ready, one inquires into who am I, what is my true nature, and the knowledge that arises through inquiry destroys all the bondage, sorrow and suffering. Why? Because as long as I think I am the dreamer, the dream world is real, then the dream character is going through some sorrow, some finitude, some enjoyment. But the sense that I am this limited individual going through this dream, that continues. And there is always fear that I will lose something wrong will happen. But the moment a person wakes up, one realizes that, oh, none of this was actually there. Same way, a person who realizes one's own self goes beyond all sorrow, all bondage, all fear, because that small entity, that jiva, is no more there. Hence he says here that sacrifice in which ignorance is offered, like in any sacrifice we see that some offering is done. So in Jnana Yajna, Gurudev used this term, Jnana Yajna, for the talks that he used to give. So Gita Jnana Yajna he used to call it. Because people generally associate Yajna only with a ritual. But he used to call it Gita Jnana Yajna because that is inspired from here. That so many people have worked together to make this yajna possible. That we are sitting here, this place is offered to us, and then so many people have put their effort, they have come. So all that has been there, then everyone has come together for the common objective is that we must gain the knowledge, improve our lives, get the inner strength to face life. So what is the offering that we are doing? The offering is of the ignorance, of false notions, of attachments, in the fire of knowledge. In the fire of knowledge, when this is offered, the mind becomes more and more purified and single-pointed, and ultimately the knowledge that arises, self-knowledge, makes a person realize that I am not this finite entity. Everything else can only make the mind pure, but we still feel limited. Through Jnana Yajna, through the knowledge of the self, and through contemplation or meditation as we call it, a person transcends the sense of limitation itself. Hence he says that Jnana Yajna is the best form of Yajna. Again in the 18th chapter also he will speak about this. Now how does one get this knowledge? One important aspect is that knowledge is very, very subtle, and it is not easy just to read books and gain the knowledge. Even for ordinary things that we learn in the world, we require somebody to teach. So in our culture, one always believes that Acharyavan Purusho Veda, a person who has an Acharya or a teacher or a guru, will know. Because the path is extremely subtle. Especially the ego in us is so high that when we become a victim of that ego, we don't know ourselves. When am I acting out of the ego? When am I acting beyond the ego? That one doesn't know. It's very, very subtle. Our own attachments cloud our mind. Hence a teacher is very, very necessary. So here is a very beautiful shloka, verse number 34. It speaks about what should be the way in which a person relates to the teacher and how will one gain the knowledge. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam Jnaninastatvadarshinaha. So he says, Tad Vidhi, gain the knowledge of that truth by three ways. Pranipatena, by surrender. Pariprashnena, by questioning. Sevaya, by doing seva. Upadekshanti te jnanam. These three are to tune up the mind with the teacher. And when the mind is tuned up, then the knowledge will be indicated. Upadekshanti te jnana. And who will be the teachers? What are the qualifications of the teacher? Jnaninaha tattvadarshinaha. They are well versed in the knowledge of the scriptures and they also have the experience of the truth. Such teachers, when we approach them, these are the three things we must do. Surrender, ask appropriate questions and serve. So let us see what does this mean. Somebody went and asked Gurudev that why do we need a guru? I can learn from the books, I can learn from CDs, talks, so many things are there. Why do we need a guru? So Gurudev said, why don't you ask the question to the book? The very reason that you are asking the question means the book cannot answer our questions. And our Guruji Swami Tejomanji says you need a guru because while reading a book when you sleep, the book doesn't know that you are going to sleep. But if you are in front of the Guru knows. So anyway, point is that the path being subtle, one needs the Guru. And Shankaracharya ji writes in one place that even if you are very well versed in the scriptures, in the entire Vedic knowledge, you may have read the Veda, etc. But don't inquire into Vedanta without a teacher. Shastrajñopi Brahmajnana Anveshanam na kuryat. Don't inquire into self-knowledge or knowledge of Vedanta without a teacher, because it's very easy to get misled. Because Vedanta says, suppose let us say somebody reads on their own and they think that anyway everything is an illusion. Why should I do my duty? It's all illusion, Maya. That's a misunderstanding. So, a teacher is necessary to make the person walk the path steadily. There are many reasons, I won't go much into the detail of it. A candle which is lit alone can light another candle. This is not an information which is being given like any other subject. This is a knowledge of the subject itself, the knower. The knower knows physics, chemistry, biology, geography, history, all that. But who is the knower in you? Is the body the knower? Is the brain the knower? Is the mind the knower? Who is the knower? So that inquiry into who am I cannot be done just like that. Hence one needs to go to the teacher. So he says here, Tad Vidhi, know that truth. How? First thing he says is Pranipatena. So there is a very famous statement which says that the teacher does not see your ability or inability, he wants your availability. The teacher doesn't discriminate. There is no entrance exam to get qualified to be a disciple of a student, of a teacher. Teacher does not see that he is a very bright person, he is a dull person. None of that. All that the teacher needs is the availability of the student. If a student who is absolutely dull but is available to the teacher, that person will realize the truth. But a very bright student, not yet available to the teacher, even though he may be living with the teacher, nothing he will know. So it's about tuning up the mind with the teacher. So what does it mean to be available to the teacher? The Gita says 3 things one should do. And that the first is pranipata, surrender. Because when we go to the teacher, we are going there to get knowledge. And knowledge comes into the mind of a person who is humble and who has surrendered. Actually, the first one itself is enough. If complete surrender happens, there one will realize the truth then and there. But here at least the surrender must be there, that emotionally we need to have that feeling that this teacher knows and I am here to surrender. I accept what the teacher says. And then think, blocks are not there. Resistance is not there. The more the resistance is there, the greater the time that student takes to understand. Because from the standpoint of the teacher, what the teacher is saying is good for the student. The student may not even know. And many such movies, even the basic things like, suppose let us say even in martial arts, you will find that. Long back there was a movie called Karate Kid. I don't know if you have seen, some of you. In that, that small kid, when he goes to the teacher, he already has so many notions about himself. And when he goes there, the teacher makes him remove the jacket, put it on the tree. Again wear it, again remove it, again put it on the tree. And he makes him do that for a week. He can't understand what is happening. So, ultimately that student's ego comes down, he surrenders, and the moment he surrenders, he becomes open. He understands that why this was being done. So that whole movement has to come in him when he has to fight. So you will find that initially when we go to the teacher, it is not easy to surrender, to accept. And especially when the teacher is talking about Vedanta, then it is most difficult. So what helps a person to surrender is if I really feel that I don't know. That helps a person to surrender, that I don't know. And I am here to gain the knowledge. If a person goes with that notion that I know, then to that extent that surrender is difficult. Even if I have studied the Gita on my own, the Upanishads on my own, even if I have done all that, I may only know the word meaning, or I may know the commentaries which are written on it. I may know the intellectual arguments, but the knowledge of the truth which is intuitive is very different. It is beyond all the words. Hence, surrender is a very important aspect. First is it comes from the feeling that I don't know, with that humility that I want to learn. Second, if the mind has to steadily pursue spirituality, it must get emotionally anchored. Where is our anchor? Is a question that one has to ask oneself. Because emotions get turbulent. And emotions get turbulent, then whatever I know also becomes useless. Only way to manage the emotions is to surrender and get anchored. Either in the Lord, or in the scriptures, or in the Guru. 3 supports are there. And why only 3? Why can't I anchor in my, let us say, parents, or my relatives, or my work? Because they themselves are finite. They themselves are perishable. Ishvara, or the Supreme, is not perishable. And the love of all the 3 is unconditional. That is the most important reason. The Lord or the Sadguru or the Shastra loves us as we are. And that is what we need. Completely, if we feel accepted and loved, in that atmosphere only we grow. Today the difficulty is why we are not able to practice what we know. Because what we know and what we love are 2 different things. Do I really love the self? If I love the self or I love the Lord, mind will keep thinking about that. Because what I love, I remember. But I intellectually know about the self or know about God. And emotionally, I am behind something else. This person, that object, that success, this thing. Nothing wrong in pursuing any of these. But my anchoring should not be in these. Today I am anchored in them. So my work itself is my anchor. Or a certain success I want to achieve, that is my anchor. And my whole personality is geared towards that. Then to take out time for Vedanta will be a great effort. But if my anchoring is in the Lord, I remember the Lord, then sadhana is not a difficult process. So where do I anchor? Who loves us unconditionally? In that entity, if I anchor, I feel secure. Otherwise, we are beggars of happiness. Running behind people, give me love, give me happiness, give me praise, give me this, give me that. In that, the mind cannot remain introvert. Hence, the Lord says here that pranipata, surrender to the teacher. There was one person, in Chennai, there was this Gyan Yajna of Gurudev. So he was talking, and there was one gentleman who came there who was a very successful industrialist, but did not have a very good reputation. He had lost his wife, he was alone, and achieved a lot of success, but different unfair means, and did not have a good name. So he came, he attended the talks, In the beginning, he was sitting in the last row, skeptically, okay, Swamiji and talk and Gita and all that. Because one of his friends brought him there. And slowly, he started understanding, and then from the last row, he started coming and sitting in the front row. This friend of his took him to meet Swamiji, introduced him to Swamiji, and a few associations happened, a few interactions happened. So when that whole yajna got over, and Swamiji gave the date for the next year's yajna, he told the whole committee that this gentleman will inaugurate the yajna. So they all were very disturbed. They said, Swamiji, if you associate with this person, you will get a bad name. He may be very successful, but he doesn't have a good reputation. He is not fit for inaugurating a Gita Gyan Yajna. Gurudev said, no, he will inaugurate. And he went. Next year when the yajna happened, on the first day, this person was there to inaugurate the yajna. And he was in tears. And he read out a letter that Gurudev had written to him. 2.5 months before the yajna has to start, Gurudev had written a letter to him. And he said that go to the Krishna temple every day, do 2 malas of japa, give up all your vices, and sincerely invoke His grace. By the time the yajna will come, you will be ready for it, and I trust you. And he read out this letter, and he was in tears saying that nobody has shown me this much of love and trusted me so much. I just met Swamiji a few days back, and he understood that I was feeling lonely and I was feeling very emotionally let down. And this person transformed fully. Just because he made himself available and he started following that, he himself felt the transformation in him. So surrender means that a person becomes open to follow the instructions, emotionally gets anchored, does not have two thoughts about whether I know more. Sometimes people go to a teacher not because they want solution, but they go there to show how intelligent they are and cook up some complex question and then ask some question. So then the knowledge doesn't get in, because Gurudev always said that this knowledge is not from the lip of the teacher to the ear of the student. It is from the heart of the teacher to the heart of the student. And for that the tuning is very necessary. And tuning can happen. Where is the block? Is the block there in the teacher? The block is in the mind of the student. So if the student is able to let go, then the tuning happens. Student has to open up the mind. You know, our head, if you see the way our head is, it is like an inverted pot. Inverted pot, when it is there, how much ever rain falls, water can't get collected. One has to turn it upside down. I'm not saying you twist your head and do something. Intellectually I'm saying one has to open up. So, tad vidhi pranipatena. First is the surrender and emotional anchoring in the teacher. How do I emotionally anchor? Be open-minded. Know that the teacher loves me no matter what. There is a nice couplet in Hindi which says, Sadguru mera surma kare shabd ki chot, mare gola prem ka hare bharam ki khot. Through the words he is as though hitting the ego, puncturing the ego, but it is all done out of love. So be open to the teacher, the knowledge. Know that the teacher loves, the Lord loves, the scripture loves me as I am. Third, be ready to follow the instruction as the teacher gives. And fourth, this is the thing that has to be done when there is sufficient surrender. And that is meditate on the form of the teacher or the Lord. That's why we always say Guru Sakshat Parabrahma. A person who sees the teacher as a human being will start finding the faults in that human being. Why did he do like that? He is also human, I am also human. But that we don't realize. That the teacher is there in the human form only to guide us, because we are not able to see the divinity within ourselves. Otherwise, teacher is not just a physical body. So, when we surrender, even same with the Lord, when Bhagavan comes in the avatar, he appears in the human form, but he is not a human being. He is much more beyond that. So, that bhavana who has, that person will meditate on the form of the teacher or on the form of the Lord. And why that is necessary? Because whenever the mind is idle, it keeps on thinking, and the thinking in the mind is in the terms of pictures. So if the bhavana has to arise in our mind, then we have to meditate on the form. So tad vidhi pranipatena. So pranipata, when one surrenders, more and more one meditates on the form of the teacher. The form, as we know, represents the qualities. All those qualities that the teacher has and whatever we admire. Don't we do hero worship of that? So if a student admires the teacher, the form of the teacher is a very powerful means to make the mind single minded. So this is actually called Guru Upasana. What is written in this shloka is called Guru Upasana. So meditate on the form, follow the instructions of the teacher, have an open mind, know that the teacher loves me as I am. Shankaracharya ji writes in one commentary saying that how much does a parent love the child? The highest form of love in this world, the example given for it is the love of the mother for the child. So Shankaracharya ji says that the love of the Guru is more than the love of thousands of parents that one has had in thousands of births earlier. Because the Guru-Shishya relationship is a very beautiful relationship. It goes on till the disciple doesn't realize. That's why it is not very easy to find a Guru, and if a Guru takes you under the umbrella. Fortunate we are to have come across a person like Gurudev. Very kind, very compassionate, very clear in his thinking, and very, very fortunate because there are enough Gurus in the world who are wanting to make disciples. You know, there's a nice Subhashita which says that Guravo Bhava Santi Shishya Vittapaharakaha. There are enough Gurus in the world who are making disciples to take away the wealth of the disciples. Guravo Virala Santi Shishya Vittapaharakaha. But rare are those Gurus who are available who want nothing from the student, who want to only take away the sorrow and the agitation that is troubling the mind of the student and make that student realize that your nature is happiness. Very rare. So if a Guru is making us dependent on him or her, is not a Guru. Only the Guru who remains independent and makes the disciple independent is a Guru. Otherwise one has to be cautious. In the name of surrender, we don't have to become dependent on the teacher. Surrender and dependence are two different things. So pranipata, surrender to the teacher. Then ask questions. Please remember the order is important. Sometimes it is true that people come ask questions first and then they come and surrender. That's okay, but the real benefit will happen when there is surrender first. Then because openness is there, that much only it is. It's not that teacher wants your surrender, so teacher wants nothing. What is necessary is I am open because the mind has become receptive when I have surrendered. So he says pariprashna. It's not prashna only. The word is pariprashna. Pariprashna means you ask repeated questions. The best way to relate to the teacher is to relate at the level of knowledge. Because that's what the teacher is there for. The knowledge that the teacher has is very rare. And this spiritual knowledge is a very unique knowledge. It is not a syllabus that this much portion has to get covered. This is batch number 1, students are studying now. This is batch number 2, batch number 3, they have progressed like this. If the student is ready, only one sentence of the teacher is enough. Tat Tvam Asi. Over, job is over. Go on. In Gita itself you will find that how many times Arjun keeps asking the question because he is not yet ready. And then in the Gita we find in the beginning Bhagavan says nothing. Till Arjun doesn't surrender, Sri Krishna doesn't say anything. Then he starts giving the knowledge when Arjuna has become receptive. So if the student is available through surrender, even one word is enough. But if the surrender is not complete, or surrender has happened but the understanding is not yet proper, then one has to keep asking questions. Gurudev always said that the teacher looks into the heart of the student through the questions. So his expression was, questions are the windows through which the teacher peeps into the soul of the student. What type of questions? And these questions need to be what we feel, not borrowed questions. Not some questions which one has fabricated to think. Sometimes people ask, it's a silly question. But I want to ask. No question is silly. As long as the desire is to find a solution and to evolve, no question is silly. However silly it may appear to be. If the desire is only to just casually know something, or desire is only to, prove or intellectually argue, then it is not appropriate. But otherwise, if it is a block in my sadhana, no question is silly. And through the question, the intellect becomes sharp. That's why it is very important to know what type of questions to ask. When we travel, go out somewhere sometimes. So go in a train or go in a car or go in an aeroplane, whatever. Sometimes people ask, they look at us and they say, Swamiji? No, they are not called Swamiji. Some of them they call Pandit Ji. आप हाथ देखते हो क्या? से नहीं. चेहरा पढ़ते हो? You do face reading. से no. तो आप करते क्या? Because they think that this much only. Either you should be able to read hand or read the face and tell the destiny of this man. If I can't do that, that means what am I doing? Some people come and they start asking to a sannyasi, one never asks what is the past, because the past entity is dead and gone. Functionally, one has to find out something, that's a different matter, but otherwise you never ask a sannyasi what is the past. Because the sannyasi is not interested, that entity is gone and one is pursuing the self. And that is what you are supposed to do as a student. But then sometimes one will come and ask, what did you study? What were you doing before? Why did you become like this? At such a young age. And some people will go to that extent of asking that, did somebody leave you? What kind of questions are they? Because sometimes people think that it is okay, some disappointment has come in life, so I become sannyasi. When one goes to the teacher, what question one asks? You see our Upanishads, all of them are a reply to a question. This is one of the greatest freedom available in our culture, is the freedom to question. You can question, you can not believe, and still you will be a Hindu. You can reject all the forms of God available and still you will be a Hindu. That's the beauty of our culture. So you can question. And it is the duty of the teacher, even if that same question is asked 1,000th time, the teacher has to answer as patiently as he answered first time. Because the knowledge is not easy to grasp. That compassion has to be there in the teacher. So that's why pariprashna, that ask till you don't understand. Now Gurudev, when he went to Swami Shivanandaji, he went there to expose the sannyasis. Because he thought that the sannyasis are all, his words are, they are social parasites, they are a leech upon the society, they are unproductive people. And he was a journalist. So he went with that, and he had done his law and his masters in English literature. With that skeptic mind, he went there to expose the bluff. He used to call it the bluff of the Indian sadhus. So when he went to Swami Shivanandaji and he stayed there and he lived there, he saw the service that they are doing, he saw the discipline, he had lots of questions. So he kept asking questions. So at a point Swami Shivanandaji said that your whole seeking is a very different type of seeking, that you are seeking it through the intellectual questioning. People here will not understand you, and their faith, they are simple-hearted people, they may start doubting their own knowledge. Hence, you go to Swami Tapovan Maharaj. So he sent him to Swami Tapovan Maharaj at Uttarkashi. So he went there. And when he went there, Swami Tapovan Maharaj told him that I will teach you only on one condition, because he was a very strict disciplinarian. And great Mahatma realized the truth, living in peace and contentment. But the amount of tapas that he used to do, that people won't survive with him there. So he said, I will teach you only on one condition, that whatever I teach you, I will teach you only once. And whenever I ask you, if you are not able to answer me, that day you have to leave. Imagine if that condition is put to us, what will we do? I'll find some other teacher. So Gurudev said, okay, accept it. That is called Parinipat. Surrendered, saying, okay, if this is the method, I am ready because I want to know. So what he used to do is, still he doesn't understand, he will keep questioning. So he won't allow Tapovan Maharaj to go to the next topic. And both of them are from Kerala. Both of them are Malayalis. Both of them have studied English very well. But the medium in which Tapovan Maharaj taught him was Hindi. So Tapovan Maharaj used to teach him in Hindi and Gurudev used to make his notes in English. Try doing that sometimes. Now I am talking in English, now try making all your notes in Hindi. It will become difficult. But he learnt in those conditions and he used to question a lot. Even in his talks he would always say that don't believe just because I am saying, don't accept. And he will stroke his beard, long beard, and he will say that longer the beard, greater should be your suspicion. So don't believe. So this questioning is important, especially we have lost so many things in our culture because we have stopped. One generation earlier, 2 generations earlier, they stopped questioning. In the name of faith, they said no, this is what has to be done, that's it. So as a result, today when our children ask us some things, we don't know why we do so many things. Because we have not been given the answers by our parents. To question is not being rebellious. To question is not being a skeptic. To question is that genuine expression of wanting to know that, okay, I want to know why is this like this. So pariprashna, one has to ask questions. So what kind of questions to ask? Ask about self-knowledge. In Vivek Chudamani, beautiful questions are there. Ko namo bandha, what is bondage? Kathamesha agata, from where has this bondage come? Katham pratishtha, how does this bondage sustain? Katham vimoksha, how do I be free from this bondage? These are the things that we need to know. How to get out of my attachments, how to ensure that I cultivate devotion in my heart. In Tulsi Ramayana also you will find Lakshman questions Bhagavan Ram. When they are in the forest, he asks, that the whole portion is called Ram Gita. He asks few questions saying, what is Maya, what is Gyan, what is Vairagya, what is Bhakti, please tell me about all this. There he saw Bhagavan Ram not as his brother, but he surrendered to the Lord as a guru. So questioning is very, very crucial. And if you maintain the question, that is important. There are many people in whom the question arises. but they don't hold on to the question. After some time they give up. A question is an expression of a quest. I have a quest for knowledge. I want to know. Maintain that question. One simple question, most fundamental question of life is what? Who am I? And holding on to that one question, Raman Maharshi reached the truth. For 11 years he was in silence. But just inquiring, who am I? What is the purpose of life? So many such questions are there. And the more fundamental the question, the more deeper the knowledge that arises. So coming back to this, so Pariprashna, one should ask meaningful questions which will help a person to evolve in spirituality. If one goes to the teacher and asks them, how do I become successful in this business? The teacher may say also something. And sometimes people used to go and ask Gurudev, should I invest in this company or not? Share market. He had a different power and he sometimes used to say, okay, invest now, but in 2 months you take it out. But not everybody is ready for that. So what type of questions to ask? Worldly questions, the more we ask, we may feel that we benefited, but it will have limitation. It is like using a diamond as a paperweight, not knowing the value of that. Same way the Guru is there, and from whom that knowledge can be got, by which the cycle of birth and death one is free from. From that Guru we don't ask questions which are about, my wife is not understanding me, what do I do? But how can I do? I don't have any wife. You carry on, you do something now what? Private interview people want. And what is a private interview? Basically they are saying that my relationship with my body, my intellect is not proper, and my relationship with the object, emotion and thought is not proper. In between I am trapped. And what do I do? Some solution one can give, but that is not the objective of the Guru being there. It may be a starting point, no doubt. So Pariprashna, ask questions about what is the spiritual knowledge. And then Sevaya. So here the word Seva is not only the physical Seva, but here the word Seva means to live that which the teacher has taught. That is the greatest Seva. If Seva was the first word which was said, then that would mean be with the teacher, serve the teacher, because that has a great importance. When a person is staying, in the earlier days, why were children staying in the Gurukul? Is when they live with the teacher, there will be the Guru and the Guru Patni will be there. And when one serves, one understands the way of life of the teacher. That how does the teacher approach whole life? What is the attitude of the teacher towards the food? What is the attitude towards people? What is the attitude towards one's own sadhana? What is the discipline that one is maintaining every day? So even the teacher is constantly, the students are watching. So one cannot be saying one thing and doing something else. So the way in which the teacher lives, that itself helps the student to understand how to apply this in one's daily life. So the life of the teacher is a living commentary on the scriptures actually. And hence when the student is there, along with the teacher, serving the teacher, one understands. Also the love develops for the teacher. So if the word Seva was used before, it would mean all this. That serve the teacher. Physically maybe do some work for the ashram, give some more time, energy, lot of things are there in that. Now the word given here is at the end. So here the Seva word means that whatever the teacher has taught, just live that. One sentence also if it touches our heart and we start living, that is the Seva. I have given this example earlier of this great saint called Nisargadatta Maharaj. So So his teacher came from the Himalayas. He didn't even know that he is his teacher. He was living his normal life. And one day there was a knock on his door and the teacher came and said, "Can you host me for a few days? I am a sannyasi, I have come from the Himalayas, I am a wandering monk." I said, "Okay, please come." So for a few days he stayed there. During the daytime, this person Nisargadatta Maharaj used to go and take care of his provision stores he had. Evening when he would come back, some satsang would happen. So a few days passed like that. And one day the teacher said, "I am going." And when the teacher was leaving, the teacher gave him one instruction saying, "He refuse to believe that you are this body. You are not this body." And he went. And that day onwards, he took that instruction. He continued to do his duty, but internally, he did not believe that he was this body, that this body is only a tool. And few months came to realize the truth. So even one instruction of the teacher, if one is just able to live that, that is the real seva. Teacher doesn't want any other seva. All other seva one does, but one doesn't live the way the teacher wants. That's not seva. Teacher will be happy only if the person lives what is taught. And in our culture, the heights of detachment is this only. That the teacher and student come together, teacher gives the knowledge when the students wants it, and teacher goes his way, student goes his way. There is no dependence. My student, none of that is there. They both go their own ways. Why? Because the teacher knows that this knowledge that I have given is complete, and the student, if he has realized then and there, very good. If not, it is a sadhana to go and practice that. So Upadeksha, such people who do these three, Pranipata, Pariprashna and Seva, Upadekshanti te jnanam. To such people, this knowledge is indicated by the great masters. And who are these great masters? Jnaninaha Tattvadarshina. They are called as jnanis. They are the people who are well versed in scriptures and Tattvadarshi. Not only well versed in the scripture, any scholar can be well versed in scripture. But Tattvadarshi means a person who has known the truth. Darshan means to see. Tattvadarshi means one who has seen the truth, experienced that truth. Such men, mighty men of realization, when we approach them, these are the three things what we must do. So Bhagavan gives this knowledge to Arjuna, saying that, "Oh Arjuna, this is what one must do to gain the knowledge." And such a knowledge, when you have, he says that no matter how many sins you may have done in the past, everything gets wiped out. You may face, the body may face the prarabdha of all that, but you have risen above it and gone beyond all the sins, gone beyond all merits also. So, in this 36th verse, there is a very nice analogy which is given. It's the analogy of a boat, where he says that you may have done lots and lots of mistakes, errors, sins, many things one may have done. But he says, if you gain this knowledge, Sarvam jnana plavenaiva vrajinam santarishyasi. A person who gains the right knowledge of the self crosses over the ocean of this sins and wrongdoings, everything, through the boat of knowledge. So the boat of knowledge takes a person across the sense of limitation. As long as I live as the ego, it is not possible to live without committing any mistake. Somewhere or the other we will fall because ego itself is insecure and limited. One may not commit heinous crimes, but error of judgment happens or not. We do land up hurting people. We may say, no, after all I am a human being, but that's the precise point. That as long as I live in that bhavana, I will land up making somewhere or there, however alert I may be. That's why people like Yudhishthira, how great that personality was, and yet in him also there is a flaw. And he is who? He is a son of Dharmaraj himself. And yet he had that weakness for gambling. He could not resist. So the idea is to show that as long as I live as an individual entity, finite in my capacities, I will end up making somewhere or the other the mistakes. So he says, with the raft of knowledge or the boat of knowledge, you go across the ocean of finitude. The only way to go across the ocean of finitude is through knowledge. And hence there are three analogies given here. One is the raft of knowledge in 36. In 37 he gives another analogy. That huge stacks of hay, they are there. Just one little flame of knowledge is enough to burn the entire piles and piles of hay. In the same way, we have done how many karmas in the past, how many lives we have led. That bundle of Sanchit karma is very huge. To exhaust karma by karma is not possible. Because every time I do karma, I am creating new karma. That bundle keeps increasing only. How do I get out of that? Because to exhaust that bundle, I have to keep taking birth again and again. Only difference will be that because the karmas are good, then I get better environments and I enjoy better and I have more facilities. So karmas are not that good. I am deprived, I go through different difficulties. That's the only difference. The result is always limited. Hence the Lord here says that Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute. At the spark of knowledge, just a little spark of self-knowledge is enough to destroy the bundles and bundles of karmas that we have. Why? Because as long as the doer is there in me, the result also has to be faced by me. The doer only is the enjoyer of the result. If the doer dies, there is nobody to enjoy. That entire account is written off. Bad debts, gone. It's like this. Suppose there is a prisoner who has been sentenced to 14 years of life imprisonment. Now if that prisoner dies after 5 years, can anybody hold him responsible for the rest of the 9 years? No, before 14 years is over, you cannot die. No, he is dead. Nobody will ask the question that who will be responsible for the next 9 years. He is gone. Same way, the ego in us, as long as ego is there, all the karmas are done by the ego, so long the person has to enjoy all the karma phala. The moment that ego wakes up to realize that, I am not the doer at all, I am that consciousness, all karma is gone. So that's the power of knowledge. And that's why the third analogy he gives here is that nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. Actually not an analogy, but it is a praise. That there is nothing more purifying than knowledge in this world. And hence Arjun, integrate your body, mind, intellect through the practices of yoga which were said earlier and pursue self-knowledge. In time you will realize that. So he says, Tat Swayam Yoga Samsiddha Kalen Atmani Vindati. You will experience that truth in time. All that you have to do is pursue knowledge. That's why Vivekananda ji said in one of his speeches, he said that knowledge is the goal of life, not pleasure. How we live our life right now is pleasure is the ultimate goal. That everything that I am doing is to have a well settled, comfortable life. And nothing wrong in that, but that can't be the goal of life. Goal of life has to be knowledge. And knowledge of what? Knowledge of the self. I have to know who I am. Now this knowledge comes to a person who has a teacher. That is one requirement. Another requirement is one must have faith, Shraddha. So very beautiful verse is verse number 39. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara sanyatendriyaha jnanam labdhva param shantim achirenadhigacchati. So in this the first quarter is powerful. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. One who has faith will attain this knowledge of the self. So three aspects are given here actually. Shraddhavan, tatpara, one who is intensely seeking that. And samyatendriya, one who lives in self-control. Whoever has these three, jnanam labdhva, that person will attain knowledge. No, one is the shraddha, is faith. Second is tatpara, single-pointed pursuit of that knowledge. Or tatpara also means intensely seeking that knowledge. And third one is samyatendriya, meaning one who lives in self-control. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatpara samyatendriya. Why is faith required in this path? I have a nose. For that do I need faith? To know that I have a nose, do I need faith? Why I don't need faith? Because it's visible. That I am feeling very angry. Do I need faith to know that? Because I am going through it, feeling. That I believe in, let us say, democracy. Do I need faith? It's an intellectual clarity that I have that democracy is a good way of governance. Done. Then where is faith required? To know the self because you can't see. That which is not perceptible by the senses, which cannot be felt by the mind, which cannot be thought of through the intellect, but which is the reason because of which the perception, feeling, thinking is happening. First of all, faith is required to even know that there is a truth like that. Because you cannot prove that through some physical means. That's why Gurudev always used to joke and used to say that, God is not something that can be shown in a test tube. This is God, see. You can't show, it's not physical, it's not perceptible. And God is not some emotional feeling. Or self is not an emotional feeling. But Swamiji, today I felt it. I caught the vibration. For a long time it was eluding me, but now I caught it. Because I felt so light, almost I was gliding. And there was a blue light which came. And I felt so peaceful. That feeling is the self. I got it now. But it is not a feeling. Because it will go away. It is not some intellectual argument and some thought. But how is this equipment able to do this? There is a truth behind it. So scriptures give us a lot of logic and experiential proof. Shraddha, please remember, Shraddha is not blind belief. A lot of people say Andhashraddha. That word Andhashraddha is a what we call oxymoron. Shraddha cannot be blind. Belief may be blind. Blind belief is proper. Blind faith is not proper. Because then it is not faith. Gurudev used to tell us that belief reinforced with conviction is faith. Initially I may have only a belief that there is a truth. But then to transform that belief into conviction, how do I transform? I need to know logically. I need to know the time-tested knowledge about it. And I also need to know the experiential proof. So Shruti, Yukti and Anubhuti. Shruti is the time-tested knowledge. Yukti is the logic. Anubhuti is the experience. Based on these three, that belief transforms into faith. And this process you can apply even in science. Today only I was reading that there is some discovery they have made about the beginning of the universe.
Yeah, the Big Bang.
That they have come to find out a little more, some more details about that Big Bang, and how in a fraction of a second from a small, minutest particle, the whole creation has manifested. In a fraction of a second, the whole thing has started, and it is continuously expanding. Now, in that article, one thing interesting was written was that this cannot be proved. A lot of theories of science cannot be proved, and there can be many other ways of looking at it. This is the line which they have written there. So, even in science, if you have to believe something, one has to rely on the time-tested knowledge of the earlier scientists. One has to know what is the logic, how have they come to it. That's why they have not fully declared it. They are saying we have to still put it through some more processes of logic. And experiential proof has to be there. Same thing applies even in the subjective science. That when I have time-tested knowledge that there is a self beyond body, mind, intellect, it's not blank, it's not zero, it is not nothing. Yeah, the soul is. And what is the nature of that soul? I have to know that. So why is the soul there? What is the nature of that soul? How do I logically know its existence? And what is the experiential proof that every night when I go into the state of deep sleep, I am not aware of body, mind, intellect, but I am. Many such things the scriptures give us. So based on that, that belief becomes faith. So Shraddhavan, initially if I don't have all this, but I just have the Shraddha on the teacher saying the teacher knows and I am ready to try the path that the teacher is showing. He says Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. So one must have deep Shraddha, and Shraddha is required in four things. Shraddha in the teacher, Shraddha in the existence of that goal, that there is a self like that. Shraddha in the means, that is the Shastra, that this means will lead me to that goal. And Shraddha in oneself, that I can discover that. In all these four, what is the most important? Which is one most important aspect? Shraddha in Guru, Shraddha in the Ishvara, Shraddha in Shastra, and Shraddha in oneself. Which is the most important? Think again. The moment I can't comprehend something, the moment I make some mistake in spite of knowing, my Shraddha in myself falls or not? Shraddha in the teacher is the most important. Why I tell you? Simple reason. If I have Shraddha in the teacher, even if my Shraddha in the Lord, Shastra and myself goes down, the Guru can help me to bring all the three up. But if I don't have Shraddha, or even in Ishvara, Guru or Ishvara, they are one, but just for understanding we have separated it. That's why he says Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. One who has Shraddha will attain the truth, will attain the knowledge. And for that Shraddha to transform itself into that knowledge, Tatparata is required. I go into Tatparata, but one definition of Shraddha is important here. What is the meaning of Shraddha? That capacity of the intellect because of which it can retain the truth, or it becomes capable of knowing the truth, that is called Shraddha. Shrad dhatte iti Shraddha. That because of which, when I have Shraddha in my intellect, the intellect becomes capable of knowing the truth and retaining the knowledge of the truth. If that Shraddha is not there, neither the intellect is capable of knowing the truth, even if it finds out the truth intellectually, it cannot sustain. Hence, Shraddha is a very, very, very important quality. If you have to pray for one thing from Bhagavan, pray only for Shraddha. Everything else comes after Shraddha. That's why it says Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. If a Shraddha becomes weak, the whole seeking goes, one person will get distracted. And is that not what happens? If a person is not having faith, a skeptic person comes and says, which God, God never created, man, God never created man, man has created God. These are all concepts. There's nothing called God. There's only nature. There's power, and what all will people will say. Suddenly one starts wondering, what am I doing? Bhagwan hai ya nahi hai? Whom am I worshipping? All that questions start coming. Why? Because that person, Shraddha, is not strong. In fact, the person didn't have Shraddha. The person only had some belief. So when Shraddha is weak, the intellect is not capable of knowing. Or when Shraddha is not there, intellect is not capable of knowing the truth. When Shraddha comes into us, then we become ready to know the truth. Shraddha is one of the 9 qualifications required in the path of Vedanta to know the truth. Hence he says, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparaha. One who single-pointedly seeks that knowledge. Doesn't get distracted and intensely wants it, that I want to know the self. Tatparta means that one is as though impatient. And samyatendriya also lives in self-control. Does not allow the mind and the senses to get indulgent and drain away all the energies. Opposite of Shraddha. See, what does not allow our Shraddha to remain is our attachment to the sense pleasures and the body. The more I am attached to the body, the lesser Shraddha one will have. Because I believe more in the form than the formless. Kripa comes from the Lord. Shraddha we can cultivate from ourselves also. By our effort also. But of course, by blessings of the Lord, one gets Shraddha also. So these 4 are also said in the name of Kripa. Atma Kripa, Shastra Kripa, Guru Kripa. Jnanam labdva param shantim achirenadi gacchati. With the knowledge, one attains that supreme peace. To conclude today, there is a nice shloka, which is shloka number 40. It says, Agnyascha ashraddhadhanascha. One who is ignorant, who does not have faith, and keeps doubting, samshayatma vinashyati. That person will perish. So the whole line is Agnyascha ashraddhadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati. Unfortunately, only the second quarter was taken out, and people, when they asked questions, they were told, don't ask questions. Samshayatma vinashyati. Keep quiet. That's why they have in English also one saying, doubting Thomas shall perish. But who is that doubting Thomas? That doubting Thomas is one who has neither. See, either I should have knowledge or I should have faith in somebody else who has knowledge. If I can't have both these and then I keep doubting, then definitely I will perish. That's why in Hindi it is said, खुद की अक्ल नहीं, दूसरों पर विश्वास नहीं, उसको कोई नहीं बचा सकता. So Agnyascha, ignorant one. If I am ignorant, let me at least have Shraddha. Ashraddhadhanascha, samshayatma vinashyati. A person who has these 3 will perish. Not just the one who asks questions. Nayam lokos tinaparaha. There is neither that person will be able to live happily in this world, nor will be able to evolve into the higher ways of living. That's what the scripture says. So the last part of this 4th chapter is the Mahima of Shraddha. So in the beginning we saw today the glory of knowledge, and then the last part here is the glory of faith. A person is what his faith is. So with this the 4th chapter concludes. Tomorrow onwards we will take up the 5th chapter.
So we written 3 things which convert belief into faith.
Shruti is the time-tested knowledge of the scriptures. Yukti is logic. Anubhuti is the experiential proof. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.